I do have. Okay, so you travel a lot.
I
Would
try
you
to.
rather? And I'm gonna what now?
I try to.
Right? I have a couple because I have this vision. Like I want to be a traveler. Like I've traveled a lot in the United States, but I've never like left North America, like Mexico, Canada.
Yeah.
So, but I do have a weird question for you. Okay, would
Yeah.
you rather travel into like deep, deep space or deep, deep ocean?
Uh,
Like go down like ocean, like deep ocean floor, like there's stuff we don't know exists down there, or go into the unknown of space.
ooh, that's really hard. I think I would probably go ocean
Oh, okay.
if I wasn't so freaked about the whole pressure killing you concept.
Well,
Um,
let's take that part out of it. Okay. Of
yeah.
course you would go there on that. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, no, but like one of the submersibles that doesn't blow up on you
Yeah,
down at the ocean floor, like that's really cool to me because there's so much to see. I think the concept of um like nothingness
yeah,
is freaky in a very different way. And
yeah.
like how far would you have to go to actually see something cool in space
True.
feels very and like you can get somewhere and there's like nothing and you're like it's a rock, right? Like there's
That is
nothing.
so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. Very true. What about you, Chad?
Uh, I think the ocean would be fun. However, my adrenaline rush would probably be space because that's where it's like you're coming back if you're in the ocean. Space might there's
Oh,
questions there, you know.
Hmm.
yeah. I'm thinking there's got to be some like alien life form out there that's super smarter than us. I think they float over our planet and like, oh, there's the ghetto. Like I'm gonna keep going. Like I think that there's some cool stuff out there that I would hope they'd like abduct me and want to keep me and like let's research
Take
this guy.
me.
He's dumb. Let's figure out what's going on in their brains in America or in the world in Earth. But
Yeah.
anyway, okay. When you travel, I guess you fly a lot. Would you rather upgrade your flight to first class or upgrade your hotel to like a suite?
Where am I going?
It doesn't matter.
So, most likely hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you start getting into like second, third world, like
Uh,
non-Western countries, like hotels, the class of hotel changes pretty dramatically really
okay.
quickly. Things like hot water become not um
Oh
an
wow.
essential or
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
expected. And so like that becomes really nice and flights are just temporary, but I mean 22-hour flights are brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. Like
That's crazy.
but at the
yeah.
same time
Yeah.
I think she's onto something because it depends on where you go because
Yeah.
you can always get on a first class flight
Yeah.
Yeah.
from wherever because you're always going to hit an airport or whatever. But
Right.
when you stay somewhere for 3 days and you don't have running water,
But
another story.
is that part of the thrill for you, of like going to a third world country, or is it just to go to the third world country, or do you
No,
want the full immersive experience of being in a third world country?
yeah, it's more about like experiencing
Yeah.
other people's lives of like what would it have been like if I didn't hit the lottery and was born here, right?
Right.
Like what does that look like and what are the various things that we experience that like we take for granted or that we assume are natural and
Yeah.
like the rest of the world like okay, eggs are a really good example. Most of the world doesn't refrigerate their eggs.
What?
And so yes, like
So you have a
this is
really
a
short
very
shelf life, so to speak, if there is a shelf.
yeah. And so like you don't have pasteurized eggs and so they're not refrigerated. And so like it's those little things of like, oh, you can start to draw conclusions around like our industry and how we got here. And there's a lot of learnings that come from it. So that's
Dude,
my drill. You'll learn very quickly. I love to learn.
I love
Um,
that. I saw your post. I was creeping through LinkedIn.
sure.
And I saw your post like the first day or whatever, first week of ePay, when you were talking about how like you've your career you've helped brands understand people through data and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so then you made this bold statement that I love, because I'm the same way. And you were like, talking about how you were going to come in with ePay and change the game for insurance. Not you personally, but like ePay was, which I love that, because you guys are doing that in a lot of ways. Like, but for you specifically, how has your past experiences, including travel to third world countries and whatnot, shaped your approach to the insurance industry? Because you're new to the insurance game somewhat.
Yeah.
So
No,
how did that-
entirely.
yeah. So talk to me.
Yeah. Okay. So how has it shaped how I think about it? I think first and foremost, coming into any new industry, you have to be able to sit down with customers and understand them. And I think there's a lot of value in coming into a new industry because you don't have a bunch of pre-existing notions about how things should work or what the processes are. And so it makes you very adept to listening to customers.
That's good. Yeah.
But I think also like when you're listening for how to change the game and what are big, bold things that you can do with products, you're really listening for not what people tell you, but the emotions behind it, the things that they don't realize have become common, kind of like what I was talking about with third world countries, right? Like the things that we expect are just a fact of life or will never change, or this is just the process. And so you're listening for a bunch of those things to start to come together and hear for where there is a possibility of something looking and feeling very different to solve a problem that people don't even realize is there.
Yeah, Chad could probably relate to a lot of that. He came into the insurance industry from film background and like TV background, and he was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, I mean, I still have so much to learn, even now, and I've been in it for almost 3 years, and I'm still like, that went over my head. I have no clue what you just said to me, So,
and it's funny, I take it for granted, because I grew up in the industry. I've been in this industry since I was born. Like, my dad is in this industry, and like my whole family's in it, and so to me, it's a second nature. People say something like, "Oh, yeah," and people are like, "What? What does that acronym mean? Or what do those letters mean? Or what does that do?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's like breathing for me." So it's funny to hear, but to see that you're coming in, and I feel like ePay, Robin, people, you are changing the game, and you're putting your own stamp on things like that. So it's got to be a cool feeling for you to be like, okay, so I am new here, but there's space for me to grow. There's space for me to learn and to make a difference. I think that's super cool for you.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the credit really goes out to the team. Like, we are a large team and I am not working alone. And so it's cool to see my individual impact and a company that's growing so quickly, but really any change in the game comes from the phenomenal organization that we have. And it could never be one person, right? Like,
So,
but we need, but the industry needs more people like you.
100%.
The fact that you're constantly a student and because it is an ever changing industry. And so all of the new challenges that come along, you do need to be a student, a full-time student in that regard.
Agreed. And so being someone who likes to learn, one of the other things I saw, again, as I go through people's LinkedIns and their, Google people before I bring them on the show, I saw you had a background in a little bit of market research and some of that kind of thing. And so it doesn't surprise me knowing that you like to learn now. Have you dove? Have you dove into the insurance industry? Oh, that was bad. Chad, you have to help me out on that one.
Arkansas is coming out today.
Yeah. Have you dove into insurance industry with the market research, and what are some of those things you might have learned as it relates maybe even to ePay?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes. So certainly dove into the industry head first. I mean, we start with customer problems and what are the processes and like baby steps, right? Like how does a policy go from a quote to a bind? And what are the various pieces that go into that? You start there.
Yeah.
But then looking at the holistic insurance industry, we've done a ton of research, or I had to personally do a ton of research to understand like what are the macro impacts that are impacting this. And I think the interesting part about the insurance industry that's really specific to it is the longevity that it has. Like, this is not a new industry, unlike some HR techs or data visibility and security, which is also in my past, right? Those are relatively new industries compared to insurance. And insurance has this really long established staying power that most others don't.
100%.
Which lends itself really well to um, the stability of technology, making really deliberate decisions, unlike some of the faster adoption things that we see in other industries, right? There's very less shooting from the hip. There's a lot less around like making immediate changes and adopting things just because they're the cool, flashy thing. There's a lot more very deep thought that goes into some of the decisions that independent agents make around their technology.
Well, and that's why
processes.
So for so many, I say so many years, but for the last, let's say 5 or 10 years, you've heard this word disruption within our industry because of what you're talking about. It's such a historically, it's a long, I don't know, I'm saying, what is going on with me today? The history of the insurance game, it's hard to come in and just disrupt that because it's been around for so long. But then on the flip side of that, it's easy for people like me to lean into that's the way things have always been done. So there's a little bit of that. You have to have some disruption if you want to use that word, but then you also have to understand and respect the historical nature of the insurance industry.
Yeah.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm recording this early for me, and so I am struggling with words, dang it. But anyhow, that made sense though, right?
Yeah.
For both of you. But yeah, so I like what you're saying there is what I'm getting at. All of that to say, I appreciate that. But I do want you, I'm glad you recognize that there is this long tail there, but also there is people that want to disrupt it. But, with Agency One, we come in and say, we want to disrupt without disrupting. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that aligns a lot with what ePayPolicy is wanting to do.
That's right, because I view it as I view it as like our role here is to find the problems that are really problems, that are painful, and that like are actually stopping insurance agents from handling their customers in a more effective way, having the data to help customers better make decisions, right? All of those things. And so it weeds out some of the higher level, if you will, the floofy, the nice to have problems, and really helps us get down to the core of what matters. If people aren't willing to change their processes, it's probably not a big enough problem.
Yep. That being said, all the things we've been talking about and fumbling through on my end, how does that, translate into your role as like I like the role title. Is that your official title, product strategy? What? Go ahead. Tell the world your title, and then talk about how all of that kind of flows into your strategy and what you're doing.
Yeah. So my title is head of product strategy. You're right.
Yeah, I like that.
Official title. Yeah.
It sounds so cool, but anyhow.
And so what that means is my role is to help products. So we have a head of product management who's ultimately responsible for the roadmap and the products that actually get delivered. And he and I work hand in hand on how does the combination of those various products work together. So a little less siloed on the individual products, a little more high level portfolio strategy is what we call it. How do those products start to work together so that my running joke is always like, we're not looking for 1 + 1 = 2, right? Where you have a product over here and a product over there and they work independently, but they may have disjointedness and they're individually valuable, but really on their own. Yeah. I'm looking for 1 + 1 = 5 or 10, where when you put two products together, then they become so much more powerful, right? And so, you may get value using one or the other, but when you put them together, you get this great hockey stick effect. And so he and I work really closely to identify what those are. What are the customer problems that span across the various products? How do we start to link this industry together in a way that solves real, like I said, real problems down to the crux of the pains that people have just accepted over time? But when you start to ask people about them, they say, wait, why do we do that? So commissions are a good example.
Again, going back to that Agency One thing, we're trying to do the same thing with, 1 + 5 = 1, we're trying to do like similar kinds of things there. And so Chad gets to work deeply in some of that, like behind the camera, but also telling that story. And so I'm sure you have.
Well, I was just curious on her take on what's happening with Agency One, just because of the fact that she is working so closely with this product now.
Yeah.
Just kind of curious to hear what's happening with that.
No, I love it because it is effectively the core of Vertafore strategy is to bring in these various components and say, okay, how do we take the thing that you're doing over here, like a payments processor, and combine it with your core management system where you may have value in a payment processor, you may have value in a management system, but how do we put them together in an agency one widget so that you get twice the value? And so now what gets delivered to the CSRs and what the accounting people see is in real time so that they can take real action, and they're no longer having to guess, right? These products are now working together hand in hand. That is a phenomenal place to be.
Or it's just saving a whole lot of time and headache.
It saves time, it saves headache, but now we can do some really cool things around the data to intelligently start to map together the policies, the payments, the commissions, the remittance up to markets, some of these later impacts that happen on the policy lifecycle because we've tied those two together up front.
Yeah, I was going to say, so from your perspective, what all you've done with, you know, your past lives, what you're doing now, and what ePay's strategy in general, how are you guys using that data and turning that into some real actions, and how is that at different levels? Because agency, carrier, MGA, same thing. Vertafore, we have those 3 verticals as well.
Yeah.
Like there's some overlap, but there's also some different nuances within each different one of those buckets. So how are you're probably, it's like a playground for you, I would imagine, with all that strategy and all that going on. I'm sure you're loving you're geeking out every day, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff. I mean, so I think your question is like, how are we using the data?
It's not really a question. It's just like, you just talk after I talk.
Yeah.
That will work.
You got to remember he's from Arkansas. Remember this.
Yeah. That's what I'm like, did Zach tell you anything? What did she just, I missed that.
Yeah.
Zach should have informed you, like, I'm a terrible host of a podcast. So I don't know. Don't fire me, Vertafore. But anyhow.
No, I think you're doing
I'm
great.
just saying, like, okay, I guess the question would be, with the data you just talked about and tying all that together, you know, what has that been like for you? And, like, what is ePayPolicy doing to help the agent, the MGA, and the carrier, tying that data with all of the things you guys are doing, and with Agency One, and with all your other partnerships? Run, have fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really fascinating, right? ePay is in this really interesting position because we integrate across the Vertafore product suite, including Finance Pro, right? So we can even bring in PFCs into this conversation. But with that, each of these various entities have the data that they get passed as remittance details. And ePay is already integrating into all of those systems to help reconcile and clear out any invoices, ARs, APs, et cetera, across these entities. But we can get to a very different place. And I'm sure you can pretty quickly see where I'm going. You have this single dollar of a policy that starts with maybe an insured, probably an agency, right? But then that single dollar, if you remember any of the old school cartoons, has a little path across the insurance life cycle and makes its way to the MGA, and then we'll get, transferred up the ladder up to maybe hit a PFC in the middle, and then up to the carrier, right? And that single dollar moves throughout all of these, and it has policy attached to it. And we can start to do some really cool things by integrating into all these systems to help make that process so much more smooth, right? So when we talk about reconciliation, when we talk about integrations, that concept starts to very quickly change across these various entities, because you're no longer having to print out statements. You're no longer having to do some of those really cool things in the future. All of this starts to kind of quickly collapse because we understand the concept of that dollar and what it was meant for and where it's going.
I feel like we should be playing the video, how a bill becomes a bill.
Right.
You know?
That's exactly what always goes through my mind of like, I'm walking down Congress and I'm sitting on the steps and so.
That's awesome. And I love that. Could you share like any like real, maybe not real examples, but like some examples? I guess a real example wouldn't be a thing, but an example of how data is like reshaped, some of the product or the processes that you guys are working on, you're specifically working on?
Yeah, so I think there are two different kinds of data, right? The first is like our data that we look at from a customer perspective and understanding problems.
Yeah.
So we can talk all day long about how that has reshaped our products, our experiences, what we use, and how we look at it. And then there's the second concept of like the policy data that moves throughout.
Yeah.
And that I would call like the data as a product concept. Right. So let's start with the first, like how do we use data to help inform, to make better decisions, where pain points are, et cetera. I think a really good example of that is the recent launch of quotes and invoices, right? Like we had this integrated payment page. We could see from our data that there were agents who were on AMS 360, Sajita, et cetera, that had integrated payment pages with us. So that means that the invoices that they created automatically showed up on the ePay payment page. Insureds could go in and select the exact invoice for the exact right amount. And even those agencies who had that integration were still getting a large percent of payments that were non-integrated. So insureds were coming and making payments on a non-invoice line item. It's not great for the agency's experience, but it's certainly weird for the insureds of like, I now have to figure out what number to type in. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Now there's a whole reconciliation that has to happen. And so that data point became the crux of some research to understand like, how does this happen? Why is this percent not 0.0001, right? Like the rare exception.
Yeah.
And that then informed this whole concept of, oh, because if you are waiting to invoice until you receive the payment, right? This, I'm not going to bind a policy. I'm not going to put it into the management system until the insured pays, because then I know they're good for the money. Then what are they going to the payment page for? And so that unleashed this whole concept of, oh, we need a way for agents to not have to be in the management system, muddy up the data on a policy that may never bind. And so insert quotes and invoices, this ability to come in, create.
Oh, that was a great, yeah.
Does that help?
No, that was awesome.
No, yeah.
Like Chad's like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like
you're schooling us here. You know?
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice to give to agencies out there on, you know, what you guys are doing with ePay or with payment processing or anything like that, from the outside perspective or from the ePay perspective, however you want to take that, what would that advice be to agency owners right now as it relates to payments and insurance?
What would my advice be?
Travel more?
I just like to hear that perspective of like, okay, because you're coming into it new. You have a different perspective coming in. Is there anything you looked at me like, why aren't they doing it this way? Or why isn't payments working this way? Or, you know, here's the advice I would give, even if it's like tying it back to ePay. You know, my advice would be every agency get on ePayPolicy. I don't know.
Of course, that's my advice.
Well, yeah.
Every agency get on ePayPolicy, obviously.
There you go.
I mean, like the more practical advice for payment processors is make sure that they have workflows that handle all of your processes, not just some. That's a big one. And so flexibility, customization is a big piece.
Yeah.
I think from a more general perspective, my advice for an agency would be, don't let your processes stop or prevent your customer service. Like the customer service is the really unique piece.
Yeah.
And so like your relationships with your customers, the processes are there to enable it, not to be the rigidity around it. And like, how do you create processes that better support that? And then how do you obviously bring in vendors that help support that vision?
Oh, that was money. That was great advice. I think that was really good to end this on. If people wanted to, if there's somebody over the world out there that doesn't know anything about ePayPolicy, if they're living under a rock or a deep, deep sea, where would they find ePayPolicy? Like, what would be the best way? Would it be a website or would it be LinkedIn to find you? Or however you want. What would you want to tell people?
Yeah, obviously our website's fantastic, ePayPolicy.com. If you ever have any questions, start there. There's obviously a bunch of different ways to get in contact with us on that website. If you want to reach me personally, LinkedIn's a great place to start.
Awesome.
Believe it or not, I do watch it. So I would say start there. And then worst case, emails are always readily available. Start with InMails and we'll move to emails. But yeah.
I love that. And if you want to learn more about Agency One, you can go, to our website, Vertafore.com/Agency One. You can learn more there and see how it is doing some really cool stuff on the payment processing and all of that kind of stuff and all the things that we're doing with data and customer experience, you name it. And so go check that out. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here and hanging out and watching me fumble through a podcast with Robin. I had a great time, though. So did Chad. Thank you guys for being here. And we will see you on the next one.